Hello and welcome to another Paper Classroom 5-minute video. In this session we're going to talk about two-tier drying. In an earlier video we've talked about single-tier drying. This is a typical two-tier drying system. We have a top row of drying cylinders with a drying felt on that, keeping the sheet pressed against the top side of the surface. And we have a bottom row of drying cylinders with another felt keeping the sheet on the bottom surface. Two-tier drying has many advantages and disadvantages. The pockets here and here are a disadvantage because they hold humid air, and unless you make a positive action to get rid of that humid air, it will inhibit drying. You've got open drawers here where the sheet can shrink and potentially break if the tension becomes too great. But you've also got good things, like you do dry the sheet on alternate sides and therefore you get a more one-sided sheet. So let's just talk about these advantages. So the main advantage is it dries each side alternately all the way through the system, giving you a nice one-sided sheet of paper. The disadvantage is the sheet's unsupported in the drawers here, so potentially it can break. You can get this edge flapping effect that we've talked about in other videos. There are pockets of humidity, so between here and there and here you've got a bounded pocket. You've got, in case of a top drying, you have a top drying cylinder there, you've got two sheets of paper, and there you've got a felt row and the felt, and that space in between the moisture can't get out of unless you deliberately put in something like a pocket ventilation device to push it out. So those pockets of high humidity will inhibit the drying, inhibit the removal of water from the sheet into that space. Flapping edges is another problem. In these open drawers, if you're going fast, then air can pass through the dry fabric, hit the surface of the paper, move along the surface, and as the air moves along the surface, it will cause a little, give you a little example here. If you've got some paper there and air blowing over it, it lifts it up. Same phenomena as flying, as keeping an aeroplane afloat in the sky. As air passes over it, it will cause a flapping edge. So the similar thing happens with your sheet of paper. If you've got the sheet of paper, then the moisture will come through the dry fabric, hit the sheet of paper, move left and right, and then as the air blows over the paper, you'll get these flapping edges. And if the edge flaps wildly enough, then the sheet will break. And final thing to talk about is decal shrinkage. While the sheet is being held firmly on the surface of the drying cylinder, it will dry but it won't shrink, provided you've got really good dry tensions. In these open drawers here between the cylinders, although you're pulling the paper and stopping it shrinking in the machine direction, there's absolutely nothing you can do about cross direction shrinkage. So it's in these drawers that all the cross direction shrinkage occurs. Now we look at the features of two-tier drying cylinders or systems. We'll talk about these in more detail in other videos, but we've got the felt systems to consider. There are two particular felt systems that we need to talk about. One is the use of slalom felts, and slalom felts eventually led people to the idea of single-tier drying systems. And then there's also another system where we use felts in a very different way that we call silent drive. And that's where we use the felts to drive the drying cylinder rather than the regular system of the drying cylinders drying the felts. There's a very theoretical treatment of drying known as the 4 phases of drying, so we need to talk about that in detail. And then the 3 stages of drying. So that's very, very theoretical, but very appropriate to the level 3 technical certificate. It's something that we need to be able to draw and to explain. And we need to talk about pocket ventilation, the need to push all that moist air away. So a summary of two-tier drying that we've said in this session. The good thing is each side of the sheet is dried alternately. The bad thing is it's an unsupported sheet in the drawers, therefore we're going to get flapping edges and decal shrinkage. There are pockets between the sheet, the felt roll and the drying cylinder, so those pockets are going to inhibit evaporation from the sheet unless they are well and correctly ventilated. Okay, well, thank you for listening to this short video, and please feel free to follow us on any of this social media.